welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm Nikki Wallman. Ilan Ossendrywer has been a photojournalist for over 25 years and has captured many news events both here in South Africa and in Israel. His photographs have appeared in major publications and newspapers around the world, witnessing sights ranging from pure bliss to unimaginable horrors. Today, he shares his story of how, as a young man, he documented life under apartheid and the release of Nelson Mandela.
I've always been brought up in a liberal household, that we were taught what is right and wrong. And I remember as a kid, one of the worst things I ever saw was these Bedfords coming into your neighborhood and seeing black women all running and jumping over fences, and policemen running with whips, chasing them to, just arrest them for all they wanted to do was make a living. And that always was in my mind, and I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous, And so I got involved in speaking against apartheid and trying to do as much as I could. And going to Soweto was very important. We showed that there were also people like me that wanted to show the world what was going on. And that showed also in Soweto and these places that there were also like whites that did care. And for me, it was a very important part of my life, especially when the day Mandela came out and I was at his house in Soweto, and I had an opportunity to spend 15 minutes with him, and while there was 100,000 people out there, I think that is the greatest thing I ever achieved in photography, was to be at his house. You learn to see things, whenever I talk about photography, you have the big picture, and there's also within the picture the small section of it that makes up the whole. And so a picture's got to explain very quickly what the situation is, and that's how I find it with my photos, is that you've got to find the angle, you've got to find the way of means of understanding the situation without saying what is really going on here, because you've got to see it straight away. For example, I've been covering the Ethiopian Jews of Israel, which is one of my projects that I don't know how I know how it began, but I never knew it was going to end so big that I've been going all over the world, basically talking about it and talking about it in South Africa. I produced a book about it. But it's how you get involved in a community, and you suddenly concentrate and say, this is what I'm going to do. So I've shown the Ethiopians living in Ethiopia, in Gondar, in their conditions around the synagogue, in their homes, and how they get to want to live a dream, and how they get to Israel. Photography is always not, about just capturing the good things. It's also capturing some really sad things which has happened to me, and very horrific things. So, but becoming a photojournalist, it becomes part of you, and it becomes a way of life. And whenever I see things, I'm looking at always things that very, very visually. I always see things, put it this way, put it that way, and I put it in my mind. And that's what I love about photography and life, is that you're not always framing things, but looking at things and trying to understand it. And it's so much fun, and I love it. I wouldn't change it, doing it.
World-renowned photojournalist Ilan Ossendrywer has probably seen it all. He shares with us the knowledge and wisdom gained on his life's journey.
I think everybody defines religion in how they see it. I don't think there's one clear-cut way of being religious. This is a very difficult subject, but if somebody feels that their spirituality is watching the waves crashing on the coast and watching the coastline, I think that's perfectly acceptable. My way is being in nature and seeing the beauty of nature and saying, wow, this is incredible that this happens. And if somebody wants to spend the whole day studying, I think it's perfect. It's not for me, but I can understand why they would want to do it. And I think it's also absolutely perfect. So, you know, everybody's to their own way. I'm not very religious, but we keep kosher at home, and we have Shabbat dinners. Children have to be at the table on a Friday night, and they love it. If we don't have it, they get upset. So we do have it. It's part of our lives, a part of our being. Charity is important. But for me, being in the wilderness, for example, being with animals in Kruger Park and just seeing everything and how life is, to me, that's to me the most spiritually high thing that I can get. You see all these things in life as a photographer, and you know, it's incredible what you covered, what you see and what you do, and the humanity that passes you by, you know, in terms of your life as a photographer, because, you know, you're doing this today and it's gone tomorrow, and the next day you move on. But generally, if you take it as a whole, like a plate of soup, it's a soup that's bubbling with the most incredible things, and seeing things, and enjoying life and what it has to offer and what it does offer in the future. And as a photographer, I think for me it's one way of getting people maybe realigned to see what's going on, you know, whether it's in our wildlife and conservation, whether it's politics, or whether it's freedom of the press. You know, this is how I see myself. I've always been kind of outspoken from the time of apartheid until even now. I just think it's important that we all take stands, and I see what happens, that many of the youth today, that we're so into trying to, you know, find out making a living, that like social issues becomes a secondary thing. And with my family and my kids, I try to make them socially aware of what is going on, because in the long run, I think it does make you a better person.
Rabbi Manis Friedman has stirred audiences of every calling with his honest, no-nonsense style that is unique amongst contemporary scholars. Throughout the vast array of topics he addresses, Rabbi Friedman weaves an eclectic mix of storytelling, humor, and wisdom. On the topic of Jewish marriage, he explains the contractual bond commanded by God, the merging of husband and wife into a single soul, and why man is considered incomplete if he is not married.
Love is the appropriate icing on the cake when you have a good cake. But love is not the cake. Love is not the relationship. Love is the icing on the relationship. But if love becomes the thing, then the relationship is doomed. I mean, even a husband says, I love you, and the wife says, I love you. You see, they can't agree on anything. Love creates arguments. So love is not going to be the thing that unites them, because each one's love is their own experience. Love is a very selfish thing. So what makes us one is something beyond love. Now that oneness is very lovable. So if you have the oneness, what's not to love? But love as an agenda is as meaningless as the pursuit of happiness. The divine spark is a good reason to respect every human being, not marry every human being. So in marriage, you got to move beyond the divine spark to your common spark, because every marriage, by definition, is a reunion. Because the soul divides into male and female, and then in marriage they find each other miraculously, or intuitively, instinctively, and they reunite, one soul becoming one again. But when you have, for example, two men getting married, it's a union, it's not a reunion, so it's not a marriage. The idea of bashert means before you were born, before you were conceived, it was already chosen from heaven who you're going to marry. And that's who you're going to marry. no matter what your thinking is, you're going to marry this person. Now, you don't know who that person is until after you're married. So it doesn't help in the decision making, but it helps greatly in keeping the marriage together. Because if you know you're married to the one you're supposed to be married to, you'll do everything to make it work. If you think you made a mistake, well, that undermines everything. So there are no mistakes. When there's a divorce, it does not mean that you married the wrong person. You're divorcing the other part of your soul. But sometimes you can't get along with yourself. So it's still the other part of your soul, you just can't live together. So you get divorced and you marry a third part of that same soul. And it was all destined. And the first husband or the first wife was destined to be the first. And the second one was destined to be the second. But there are no mistakes. Einstein said God doesn't play dice with the universe. If God doesn't play dice with atoms and molecules, he certainly doesn't play dice with people's lives.
And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thank you so much for joining us. And please don't forget to tune in same time next Sunday. If you've missed any of our previous shows, you can catch them on our website at www.spiritsister.co.za. And you know we love hearing from you, so find us on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions. As always, from me, Nikki, and the Simcha team, shalom and have a safe and peaceful week.